Hello, everyone. This is Kathy, and welcome back to Empty Nesters. I'm so glad to see you again, and I really enjoy our time together. And I think this is just a wonderful place to talk about things that we don't always put out there, or we don't feel like there are people out there who will understand. So I think I'm going to talk about today a subject that may not be talked about as much as empty nesters. And I've found the timing of this in the life cycle just to be interesting because it's not something I ever thought about when I was younger. And what I want to talk about today is the fact that we are caregivers as parents. So that's only half of what I'm going to talk about today, but that's where I'm going to start with the subject. And what I mean is we're caregivers. We are there for our children. They grow up and they leave the nest. And I think when we're younger, I know I did, I thought, great, it'll be a time of renewing with my husband. We can make plans and dreams and all that. But the reality of life is by the time you get to that place in life, then we turn around and we have to care for our parents. And that's the part of empty nesting I want to talk about today because I don't think it's talked about enough. I think it's a place in our lives where sometimes we feel like, can we ever get a break? I'm just being really honest here. I was a caregiver of my mother-in-law, and I loved her so much, I cannot tell you. But the other aspect of it was the physicality of taking care of, it's one thing when you're young, right? And taking care of your kids, and you're taking care of little bodies, right? And physical needs and stuff of little bodies. But here I am older in life, right? And I felt like the task was so much bigger and so much harder because I'm taking care of an older life and someone who meant a lot to me, but is just bigger in body, right? Not a child, like a grown human being to take care of. It just takes so much more energy and time and effort. And believe me, I loved being able to give that gift to her, but it came to a point where for me, it was taking away from my own health and my own self-care and, a balance for my life. And so I think we go through this sometimes, especially with parents, because we feel such an obligation and we don't want to abandon and we want to be there for them, but at the same time we have our own lives, and it's just a very difficult thing. And also in that, depending on their health, their mental health, their physical health, all those kind of things, then you start having to make decisions about where they live, where they're going to get care, just all these very difficult things. And then tied into that, right, because they are parents, tied into that is this thing about guilt. And guilt is one of those things that can really drive you into the ground. So what I've learned, and I can just share from my own experiences, things that I've learned. First of all, don't beat yourself up and don't feel guilty about things that are naturally occurring in life. And you do have to get really real with yourself as far as what is going to create balance and health and self-care for you. That is not anything to be guilty over. That's a reality in the situation. And I would say talk to people who've been through it before. talk to professionals that are in it and trained in gerontology and that kind of thing. And people have different tolerance levels. And I tell you, I deal with fibromyalgia. So to physically take care of my mother-in-law, I could only do that for so long. I think I did it for about a year. And then I just looked at my husband and I said, I cannot do this anymore. I love your mother, but I cannot do this anymore. It was just putting me into fibro flares in my own life. And it's one of those things, right? The metaphor of when the oxygen comes out of the ceiling of the airplane, you put yours on first before you help someone else. I felt like I had not had an oxygen mask on me for quite a while. And so it wasn't going to do me any good to try to take care of her. And it was just very physical for me, giving her showers and baths and putting a wheelchair in the car and out of the car and getting her to all her doctor visits. And believe me, I understand if that's the place where you are. I get it. And so, you know, you get to the point where you have to make a decision. I cannot physically, humanly do this anymore. And what I'd like to say is do not feel guilty about that. Part of a healthy person is recognizing your limitations. And I think that's what it taught me. And that you do the best that you can, and then you try to provide what is needed in a different way. It may not be you directly, because you must take care of yourself. The other thing I want to say about guilt today is if you get to a point where you can really analyze that in yourself and really come to terms with where that sense of guilt is really coming from, that was very helpful for me. And I will just say, too, I will share this kind of personal thing. I've done a lot of hard therapy work myself, and what I learned in my process is a lot of times the guilt you are feeling may not be your own. It may be guilt that has been placed on you. It may be guilt that's been passed down generation to generation in your family. It might be guilt that actually belongs to other members of the family. So don't feel like you have to carry the burden of guilt that is placed on you by an external force or by other people. You've got to do what is right for you. And I will say, your needs and your wants are just as important, if not more important, in this situation for self-care and taking care of yourself. So never feel guilty about that, because you must create this balance in your life, a balance in your life, and what is going to create that balance. So here we are as empty nesters, thinking that the nest is going to be empty, but it's almost like the flipping of the page to the next chapter involves the switch from caregiving to children to caregiving of parents. And in that, I want you to find ways of preserving yourself, of renourishing yourself, finding refreshment, and see boundaries and limitations as a positive thing, not something to feel guilty about. So I hope today's channel has been helpful to you. If you like me, please subscribe, and I hope to see you next week, where we'll talk again about empty nesting things. I'll see you then. Many blessings.